Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day?
Hello everyone, my name's Dean and let's talk crypto. This is where you subscribe for daily Bitcoin updates and technical analysis. We track the price of Bitcoin as a proxy for the cryptocurrency markets at large. Today is November 27th, 2025. And happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrate. I found something really interesting in the charts, specifically dealing with altcoins and the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to talk about why you have to know about this phenomena. All right? I call it the Thanksgiving pivot. All right? I'm going to explain what that is. I'm also going to look at Bitcoin, what Bitcoin's doing right now, what altcoins are doing, why they're still in a very promising, very encouraging move up, and what you should expect next in terms of percentage gains until our next retracement. All that and more in this episode. Again, hope everyone is well. And watch until the very end because this is going to be an interesting episode. All right, let's start with Bitcoin on the hourly time frame. All right, so just like we said yesterday, we are still in this initial break of structure or A wave. As you can see, I have it in blue here. I have it traced. Let me zoom out actually, just so I'm catering to those of you who are new. By the way, welcome. So we have Bitcoin in this three-wave move. And just so you know, I'm timing this three-wave move. This three-wave move is a corrective pattern. It's a correction of this 24-day impulse. And because this is very likely pure impulsive price action, I can count the time that this took and superimpose that time limit on my corrective wave, because in Elliott wave analysis, wave 1 and wave 2 are temporally symmetrical. Okay, so I'm expecting 24 days of a corrective pattern that eventually gets Bitcoin back to 101, 102K, and that comes that comes up and reaches its top or on or around December 15th. Okay, that gives us about 18 more days. All right, I'm still counting down, everyone. 18 more days for this move. Now, it's not so much Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin's important because once Bitcoin does that, then it's look out below. There's a massive move down. And if you're new to the channel, here's the TLDR. The massive move down is much further than most people are expecting. And I have Bitcoin finding an ultimate support level at around $44,000 per Bitcoin, which is, again, way lower than most people that I've heard are calling for. Okay, but all the technicals point to that. So that's Bitcoin. We are still in the initial break of structure, the first third of the corrective sequence that we're likely putting in for the next 18 days. All right. So as Bitcoin matriculates to the top of this move and then goes sideways before starting its second move down, right? A wave, B wave. So let me just call it the B wave. Let me not insult your intelligence. Before Bitcoin starts its B wave, it's going to hover at the top here around 94,000, 94,500. We should, in that period of time, expect altcoins to already start moving in a big way. All right. And that's what I said yesterday. That was yesterday's analysis. And I'm basically following up on that, looking at what the charts have shown. All right. What the charts are doing. So I also told you that Bitcoin dominance was trending down, which it is, all right? And I'm not even going to look at the trend since June 16th. If you zoom out, you'll see that Bitcoin dominance has been trending down since June 16th. We're just going to focus on what we've been doing since the beginning of November. And you can see very clearly that this is a clean and clear downtrend, okay? It's a clean and clear downtrend of Bitcoin dominance. And I know some of you immediately are thinking, oh, Dean, that looks quite bullish. That looks like a falling wedge. That's one of the most bullish patterns in technical analysis. And you'd be correct. But there is such a thing as a failure of the falling wedge, right? Never in any, in all of technical analysis, there is not one example of any pattern that breaks up or down 100% of the time. They all have failure rates, okay? So what I believe we're looking at is a failed falling wedge, which is likely to do something like this, okay? And I told you incorrectly that this was my pure impulse wave 1, wave 2. Not yet, because we came all the way back up here and we formed a triple top, okay? So I'm still of the belief that Bitcoin dominance is extremely bearish. I turn on my stochastic RSI momentum indicator and it supports my overall thesis. It has momentum up here at above 80, okay? And if you look at your stochastic RSI momentum indicator, anything above 80 is considered overbought, okay? It's overheated and it's likely due for a correction to the downside. Here, just technically speaking, let's turn this off. It's quite simple. You're at resistance here, okay? And more specifically here, you're at resistance here of this move right here. And that's a triple top. And I remember saying in the past few episodes that typically price action displays either double or triple tops for exhaustion, for bullish exhaustion. And, 2 sometimes is sufficient, but 3 is really the death knell. And you see it time and time again. I think this is just another example of that, and you're going to see a swing failure pattern here, taking us into an actually momental, I'm making up words now, impulsive move to the downside in Bitcoin dominance, where you should adjoiningly see big moves in altcoins, okay? Big moves to the upside in altcoins. So I think you're still getting that, all right? But again, the call that was made as this being pure impulse and then this being my wave 2 obviously was invalidated, but that's fine. Our overall thesis on the high time frame remains that you are in a very bullish environment for altcoins, and this chart tells you specifically that you're about to experience a big move to the upside in altcoins, because if this swing fails, where is the support level? There's not really anything here. There's definitely not anything here, right? You can experience perhaps an intermediate, like a cursory bounce at that level, but honestly, once you start going down, you're basically looking at a big fall to the downside. So you should, as a result of this analysis, expect a big move down in Bitcoin dominance, which would mean you should expect a big move up against Bitcoin in altcoins. Meaning, it's not just that altcoins are going to go up. That's not enough. You have to understand that for this to go down, for this to trend down, altcoins have to fly against Bitcoin. Bitcoin has to go up a couple percent, and altcoins go up 40, 50, 60, 70%, something like that. This is what this chart is telling us, and it's still telling us that today, okay? So now, let's talk about my so-called Thanksgiving pivot, all right? I don't know how I did this or why I did this. I guess I look at the charts a lot, and sometimes I get ideas and I follow them up if I'm not too lazy. So I essentially was looking at this other chart. Remember, the other chart is all of the altcoins in in crypto minus the top 10 in market cap. And the reason I'm looking at this chart, for those of you who do not know, why aren't you looking at the total 3? Why aren't you looking at the total 2? It's because it's important to take out really high market cap assets from the overall calculation. Given that if you study the altcoin market, you'll understand that by and large, most of the altcoins that are bullish and are on support are way out of the top 10, right? So if you think about it, there's tens of thousands of altcoins in crypto, right? Most of those are not in the top 10. So this is a better representation of what's actually happening in the altcoin space at this point in time. Okay? Especially at this point in time. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Basically, there are certain altcoins that are on support. There are others that are at resistance, i.e., there are certain altcoins that are extremely bullish. They've been bullish for the past 500 days. They've been putting in accumulations for 1,000 days, some of them, 1,200 days, some of them. And then other altcoins have been at resistance for the same amount of time. Those two, just because they're altcoins, that's pretty, like, although they're altcoins, that may be the only thing they share in common. They have nothing to do with one another. And to do analysis, conflating both, and having, both being represented in the same graphic, just, it throws your data completely off. And you can't see really what's going on. This is why I'm using the other chart. I'm trying to be as clear as possible without divulging too much information, because as you all may know, I do have a crypto portfolio mentorship and consultation service and a single asset analysis service. That's how I earn a living. And I go more specifically into what altcoins are doing what, which altcoins are doing what, and how, and what's bullish, what's bearish, all that stuff. So that's why I'm being a bit coy here and not being too specific. But there's a really good reason why the others chart is the best, in my estimation, right now, the best indicator for altcoins, generally speaking. Now, taking this chart, this others chart, you can see that it goes from about 2014 to present day. And thinking about it, right, you have Bitcoin. It started in 2008, started charting in 2009, 2010 on most charts. A lot of altcoins came, some altcoins came rather, a few years after, but most altcoins didn't appear, right? When we say we have tens of thousands of altcoins in the cryptocurrency space, most of those altcoins are 5 years old or less than 5 years old. Most of them are less than 5 years old, right? That's important to understand. So when you're looking at a chart like this, and you're looking at historical data representative of the entire altcoin market, understand that most of them didn't show up until 2020. Okay, that's another thing to keep in mind, i.e., most altcoins were not in existence for the rally that happened in 2015, nor were they really participants of the mini rally that happened in 2020. Most altcoins have never rallied. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. If you really understand this market, you understand that most altcoins weren't around for these. Okay, that's the other preface. Okay, so I want to take as much data as possible, because whenever you're doing analysis, you want to have a full data set so that you can potentially come up with statistically significant information. It's really bad, and I I hate it when people draw conclusions. They didn't crunch the numbers. It's not statistically significant. The n value is like 2. That's not data. Those aren't robust conclusions. Here we have 9 data points. I pulled out every single Thanksgiving since 2016, and I used 2016 only because, I don't know, it seemed right. 2015, I didn't really feel like I needed to include it, so I thought 2016's kind of early enough, and so I have 9 different Thanksgivings, and they're represented by these vertically dashed orange lines. And what you can see just with the naked eye, right? Not any careful observation, but just like, a basic look. This is a weekly chart, meaning every single candle is a week's worth of price action. The first thing you can see is something's up with Thanksgiving week or the Thanksgiving period, because each and every time it seems like the market does something around in and around Thanksgiving. Here, it's almost exactly when the market started pumping in 2016, in and around Thanksgiving. And then in 2017, it is almost exactly around the time the market started correcting to the downside, right? 2018, almost exactly around the time the market started going back up. 2019, same thing, right? There's at the very least strong inflections, okay? And you look and you can see time and time again, these Thanksgiving weeks are important pivots. So based off of my analysis, I count at least 7. So I'll be conservative and say of these 9 Thanksgivings since 2016, there have been at the very least 7 that show almost perfect inflection points for price action in altcoins. Okay, this is why I call it the Thanksgiving pivot. This is indeed a seasonal indicator, and it's a seasonal indicator because it refers to a time during the year, the calendar year. Thanksgiving is always the last Thursday of November, and so it's seasonal. It happens with, the season and our habits. It's a seasonal thing. It has very little to do with, the market being completely agnostic to our lives. It seems like, the market's like, hey, you know what? I think I think I need to change. And what's important about this is it's not claiming, this Thanksgiving pivot isn't claiming bullishness or bearishness. There is no bias. As you can see, bullish, bearish, bullish, bullish, bearish, bullish, bearish. There is no bias. That's important because there's so many people who talk about seasonal indicators like the Santa rally and, I don't know, Black Friday and, getting into the black on the ledgers and stuff like that. That's suggests that the market's going to go in one direction or another. And that's BS because, again, it's not statistically significant. So I crunched the numbers. I put this in AI just to be sure. And AI says this. Based off of this analysis, with 9 data points and values of 9, the probability that this Thanksgiving pivot happens at random is very small to nil. And the way that was calculated was, 1 out of 52 weeks is, the probability of the pivot happening during Thanksgiving week, in and around Thanksgiving week, is about 1 out of 52. That's about 1.9%. Okay? And out of 9 years, that happened again at least 7 times. You can argue for 8, but let's just be conservative and say 7 times. That makes the entire data set basically not random, because the probability of that happening is less than 0.1%, which makes it technically, scientifically, statistically significant. So you can say, if I went to a boardroom and I had to give this presentation and say, hey, look, I found a data point. You could use this in your analysis, in your trading theses. You can implement this. It's statistically significant to 0.1%, less than 0.1%. Or it's statistically significant because the occurrence happens. The fact that it's non-random is likely, because the randomness of it all, I forget what it's called, the null hypothesis or something like that, says that this would only happen less than 0.01% times, right? 7 out of 9 years, you get almost exactly a pivot on Thanksgiving, in and around the Thanksgiving week. What does that mean for us? Now, let's zoom in and talk 2025, okay? Because we looked at historically what that meant. Now let's look 2025. What can we expect? This is interesting because, so again, there's no bias in this Thanksgiving pivot, in this trade thesis. There's no bias. It's just that there's going to likely be an important pivot, but it's up to you, technical analysts, to decide what the pivot is going to be, if it's going to be a bullish or a bearish pivot. And here we have, as I've been saying, a really nice bullish setup, which is a bull flag. We have the flagpole, we have the pennant that's down and to the right. Both of these things, right, together give you almost a can't miss trade to the upside. Can this break down? Can this fail? Absolutely. But the likelihood of this breaking down is minimized further by this flagpole. So you have a bull flag setup, you're likely to get something like this. So if we were to get a repeat of the Thanksgiving pivot in 2025, you're likely going to see that happen in a big move to the upside. Okay? But we already knew that because we've been doing the analysis on this, and we've been seeing altcoins be quite bullish. So let me put my analysis back in something like this, right? Or sorry, something like this. Yeah. Okay. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. So here is what I'm seeing. And I've refined my analysis since yesterday. Okay? My analysis is now the following. You can see really clearly, and I think it looks quite nice. Since the third week of November, we've been in a strong uptrend. And like I said yesterday, that uptrend is corrective because it's not pure impulse, but it is still a strong uptrend. And typically, these types of uptrends lead to a massive breakout. And you're likely going to get that breakout at any moment now. I say any moment, not any day, any moment. Okay? Any moment now. And I see that right here is likely the beginning of our wave one. I looked at this on the really small time frames, and I decided that this was likely the beginning of our wave one right here. So I start counting here. If we do break up and out of this 40-day wedge, look what this looks like on the higher time frames, just so you have context, you're not lost. If we do indeed break out of this 40-day wedge, you're going to have to retest it as support. Okay, so your first target, I said this yesterday, is going to be a small one. It's just a 10% move thereabouts. Sorry. It's about a 10% move. I'm going to put an alarm right here. That's small, but it's going to retest the top of this 40-day falling wedge as support. But that's not the story. The story is you're likely going to continue to rise because, look, your final target for this disbelief rally is all the way up here, okay? And this disbelief rally is just the initial rally of alt season. That makes it very clear that it's alt season. And I've talked about this before. It's a 300% move, right? 300% move. That's about a 4x. The first portion of that, the first wave of that, because we know all of these impulsive moves come in flavors of 5, or they come in 5-wave impulses, 5-wave sequences. We know that this is likely going to be your first target, and that, from where we're at right now, is about a 70% move away. Okay, so again, just to quickly recap, do expect a first move up that's about only 10%, which is modest, before retesting that falling wedge as support. Then don't be surprised if you continue to the upside in an even stronger move, and altcoins in total, generally on average, do about 70% to the upside, which means, because this is an average, others is an average normalized indicator of altcoins in the cryptocurrency space, you may see some altcoins do 100 to 200%. You may see other altcoins do 50 to 70%, something like that. That's my analysis for today. Hope that wasn't boring. Hope that was helpful, useful. Like, share, and subscribe. If it was, consider joining my crypto portfolio mentorship and consultation service, for which I'm currently running a Black Friday sale. And that sale ends tomorrow, which is Friday, Black Friday. So towards the end of tomorrow, I'm no longer running the sale. And what's the sale? It's basically 2 months free for my crypto portfolio mentorship and consultation group. You're typically paying $250 per month for the service, but that service is now being offered for 6 months at a price of $997. So you're essentially getting 2 months, right? Yeah, 2 months free. 6 months for the price of 4-ish. Okay, so that you can participate in or sign up for using the information in the pinned comment below. If that's too much of an investment and you're just looking for my take on any single asset, meaning, hey Dean, is this bullish? If so, what are the targets? What are the next targets that you can see? If not, where can I get out? Most of the times, those are the questions that I get. That single asset analysis service, just for one asset, just pay the fee, send me an email, and within 24 hours, you should have that pre-recorded analysis, and you can, even send me a couple follow-up questions by email once you receive the workup. All right, so that's it for me. Take care. Bye.
My prevalent time slot, I vocalize, too deep to localize, even when I'm right on the surface. You act surprised how I work this, but I can't lie. Many a good alibi. I'll catch you later.
Visions are vividly enhanced with emphasis and amethyst to develop morale advantages which help us manifest magnanimous. We body vitals like evangelists. So listen when you're dealing with people who be revealing premonitions with precision. At least that's what I'm aiming at for now. I speak the language of the world, meandering throughout the crowd. Used to feel safe to say anything, but now it's a risk. It's hard for me to let go when all I can do is reminisce. Gone like the wind, here's where I begin. Should I smile or should I grin what's happening? Gone like the wind, here's where I begin.